NBA writer Brad Botkin joining the show. How are the Celtics doing it right now? Because they don't, not only do they not have Kyrie Irving, but they don't really have anybody but Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
You know, I talked to an Eastern Conference exec earlier this year, and he said something that I think is really illuminating. When you play the Celtics, you're not necessarily playing the players, you're playing the team. In other words, they come out and they stick to their culture, they stick to their game plan, and they play their way. Brad Stevens has got to be the front runner right now for Coach of the Year. He puts them out there. They don't beat themselves. They're in every game down the stretch, and as you said, they're winning these close games. I don't know how sustainable that is. You know, that can go the other way very easily. But like I say, when you play the Celtics, you're playing their culture, next man up type thing.
What a job by Brad Stevens. The season that started with the Gordon Hayward injury and Kyrie Irving injured. It's interesting to see what they can do in the playoffs when they get everybody healthy. They're 3 behind Toronto with 7 left for the top seed in the East. They do have 2 games against Toronto the rest of the way, including on Friday night.
As you know, by now, it's been well debated and well discussed. Kyrie Irving not going to be available for the postseason. And you got to think, too, John, that means that Gordon Hayward, even if there was a shot that he could play, and even if the Celtics push a little bit deeper, that maybe they're just going to go ahead and let that one ride anyway. Everybody's going to say, I told you so. Oh, wow, that's great news. But, I mean, you know, you and I have been talking about him coming back and holding out hope. And, you know, I think if there was a healthy Kyrie, there still was a shot that he might put up a few later in the postseason. But I think even if they make it that far this season, they're not going to gamble.
Dude, the moment that they announced that, or I don't know if they announced, but one of the, I don't know, it might have been Abby Chin, you know, said on Twitter that that Gordon Hayward's dog had ACL surgery. I mean, I think once that happened, it wasn't just Gordon Hayward. I think it was that we had reached a point of no return for the Celtics playoff injury. There was nothing that really mattered at that point anymore. And then Yabu, of course, now Yabusele was held out of Sunday's game against the against the Hawks due to a knee. They're going to do an MRI. I mean, look, keep him as far away from this team as possible. It's like when guys had the flu and they send them home. They're almost at that point where it's like, look, we'd really like you to come back and play, but we feel like something catastrophic might happen to any one of us coming up here. So just stay home. Like, just stay away from the team. Don't let anything else happen. Keep going through your rehab, but just don't get near us because obviously we are like poison right now.
They really are. They're the most jinxed team. And what's crazy is you get younger because you're hoping that you don't have to play through these kinds of maladies. We know this season's a long season. We know it's 82 games, but only Al Horford's the real, I mean, really over 30. I guess Baines is over 32. But for the most part, this is an extremely young squad, and yet the number of games missed due to injury is really ludicrous. Some of them really funky, like all of Marcus Smart's injuries this season. And then you look at Jaylen Brown and the Al Horford concussions, and you know, look at the weird way that Gordon Hayward landed. Like, these are not your typical. They're not wear and tear injuries. Now, Kyrie's is a wear and tear injury to some extent when you consider the fact that it's related to a previous surgery. So maybe that one is the one asterisk. Like, hey, this is a known on a younger player potentially, and it sounds like this procedure is going to really eliminate the long-term concerns with this. So that's fantastic news heading into next season, and knowing that there's going to be a contract year for Kyrie coming up where the Celtics are going to have some difficult decisions there. But if they can feel 100% confident that the injuries in the past, then, hey, you know, you're going to sign them. You're going to sign them for long and big money. But with that aside, everybody else's injury is just freakish and bizarre. It's, to your point, you know, it's worse than the flu. It's more like being possessed by demons.
Right. Yeah. DNP. I mean, yeah. Needed exorcism. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. I mean, it's just,
remember, we've had this discussion about that previous big three that you and I kind of grew up on with Celtics Stuff Live, you know, KG, Paul, and Ray, and even you can throw a little Rondo in there at some point along that line. And so we went through that, and it was impossible for them to pay those salaries, round out the bench. They were handcuffed to a certain extent. And on top of that, they had to deal with injuries. I mean, Rondo's arm bending backwards is just freakish, kind of like, you know, Gordon Hayward this season. But KG, I mean, the injuries and the wear and tear on his body was real. That was a real struggle. And even when he came back, and you see him in these years with the Nets and with the Timberwolves, there was you know, there was something missing there. And he wasn't the guy we had in 08. And even then, he fought back in 10, but he really started to tail off after that. And Paul, I think, was probably the one player that the entire time he was in green was surviving it. But it's always a concern. You know, it's always a concern. And so there's a part of me that's like, even though those three players are so young, we could still be battling with a Blake Griffin-like scenario with any one of those guys year after year after year.
I think it's a little bit different. The difference between the 08 crew and this crew, in that just in the age. I mean, you've got Kyrie Irving coming here at 25, now 26 years old. Kawhi's 26. Gordon Hayward's gonna be 28. I mean, it's a younger core. I mean, remember, Ray Allen was just on the just this side of 32. So there's a very different dynamic, I think, in terms of the age that they're coming in here.
But does anybody even really know what's going on with Kawhi? I mean, I'm with you on that.
Right.
I mean, I kind of noted that at the beginning of that, making that comparison, was that they're a younger crew. But you go trade for a guy that nobody can figure out why he only played 9 games, you know, even though I thought it was 8. You trade for a guy who nobody can figure out why he played 9 games. I just think it's like the flu. You know what I mean? You don't double down and go hang out with everybody who has the cold when you have the flu. You know what I mean?